Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is Stuart Wiggins. I'll be your presenter today. I see we have several people that joined on time, but a few people that are still logging in, so we're going to wait a minute or two for them. We appreciate your patience. I'll say this again, but just so you know, everyone's on mute because of the number of people participating. So if you have a question during the webinar, we have a moderator watching those. So in your questions panel, in the GoToWebinar panel that you've got there, type your question in there, and Shelley Wiggins will see that, and she'll answer what she can during the webinar. If she doesn't get to all of them, either your client account executive or someone from support will follow up after the webinar. Also, if you're the kind of person that likes to have a printout to look at during the slideshow, there's a PDF of the slideshow available in the handout section of your GoToWebinar panel. So we'll give people another minute or two, and then we'll begin. Those of you that have just joined, thank you. We're waiting as we still see people logging in, so appreciate you guys that have already gotten there. We've got just a few more working on logging in. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. I'm your presenter, Stuart Wiggins, and this afternoon we'll be talking about how to use the new global period feature and the date last seen feature that have just been made available in our most recent version of 5.1.12. Now, I said this to some of the people who logged in early, but you're on mute just simply because of the number of people participating. That doesn't mean you can't ask a question. So during the webinar, there's a questions panel in the control panel over there, and you can type your question in, and Shelley Wiggins will attempt to answer it during the webinar. If we don't get to them all, or if yours is very specific or might need some research, your client account executive or someone from support will follow up after the webinar. Also, if you're somebody that likes to have a handout while you're looking at it or want to reference this later for your own use or with someone else, a PDF of this slideshow is available in the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel. Now, our goals for today will be brief. We're going to review these new features, the setup of them, and how they work. There's the Excel Capture facet, what can be displayed there. There's the Excel Smart piece and what shows up there. The fact that rules can be built using these attributes. You may already be using provider specialty, or you may want to consider adding that attribute to your provider setup. We'll talk about that. How does the data get updated into your system? And if you need to import any data, how do we get it there? So how are you going to be certain that your new features are available? First of all, be certain that you're on version 5.1.12. There is a configuration option that we turn on so that the archive is active. And there's a SQL job that has to be set up. If you're running SQL Express, then you're going to have to probably engage with us to make sure that job runs. If you've got full SQL, we expect there will be no setup that has to be done for that. Now, this is optional. if you want your Capture users to see this in the header of their form, you'll have to engage your form's representative and modify that header. That's optional. The values will still be available in Smart, whether your Capture users see them or not. Now, we'll begin capturing the data as soon as we turn the archive on. And from that point on, we'll be collecting date last seen, collecting global periods. But you may say, well, I want to start looking at date last seen for people over the last 3 years. There's a way to download that out of your practice management system and get it into our system. You can write or import custom rules. So if we've got a custom rule you want, we can send it to you to import, or we can talk with you about how to use these new variables and rules as you need those. Now, so what is it going to look like in Capture in the encounter header? Remember, these fields are optional. You aren't required to use them. The specialty can be displayed or not. And the display fields can be linked or separate or on separate tabs. I'll kind of show you what that might look like. So here on the top right, you see I have a section for global period. There's the procedure code and its description and the date that it occurred. Well, there you go. It happened a little bit in the future. So we've got a crystal ball here. And the patient last seen date. So those are separate, but have 2 fields right up there. And then you see down below that historical diagnosis. Another way you might do that is you might use the same amount of real estate, and if you clicked over here, you'd see historical diagnosis. If you clicked here, you'd see the global period and the patient last seen. Now this, it has the NA. You have the ability to show specialty under date last seen. So if you're a multi-specialty practice and you care that they've seen oncology, but you're a gynecologist, or you care that they've been to pediatrics, but you're orthopedic, that can display. Now we actually can track specialty both for global and date last seen, but currently it's only available for display on patient last seen. One other way that people have designed this is 3 overlapping tabs. So if you think your users would navigate to it, they could click on this and see last seen, click here and see global, click the 3rd tab and see the historical diagnosis. There's a school of thought that, saving real estate is best. There's another school of thought of if you don't put it right in front of their face without them having to move it or click on it or whatever, they will never look at it. So whatever philosophy you ascribe to, you can design your header to look like that. Now, what will it look like in Smart? Now, you don't have to do anything other than upgrade to be able to see these fields. In recent versions, we've rearranged just slightly what's in the header of the encounter screen. Encounter status is still underneath your list of encounters, but codes added, move over here. We've added hierarchical condition code information there as well. Historical diagnosis is available, but you see this block here, procedure. If you click on that, then there will be a pop-up box with the global period, the end date, the specialty, the procedure, and the description, and the date last seen. Likewise, the date it was and specialty, if available. Now, using edits are going to be exciting for some of our clients because they've been checking all this manually, but having to go and research and look and having the system let them know only when it's necessary to research this, hopefully will be very useful. The edit rules can now include the last seen date, the last seen specialty, global period code, the global period description, the end date, or the global period specialty. So you see 2 examples we have here. This one, when the global period end date is greater than the procedure date, and you don't have the post-op code. So I'm saying, wait a minute, global period isn't over, and I don't see any post-op period. Maybe we ought to build that. So that would be one approach if that's how you code. Another way that somebody has built this is if the procedure starts with 9920, knowing that we're doing a new patient visit, and the last seen date is between 0 and 3 years, stop me and tell them that you can't use a new patient E&M. The patient's been seen in the last 3 years. And you can add specialty to that rule expression as well, remember. So if for some reason you want to say they've been seen by that specialty, but that does not count for this provider, you wouldn't want to be alerted with that if they've not been seen by this particular specialty. You could still bill for new. And so what would those new edits look like they would still show on the bottom, just like interleaved with your other edits, right? You'll notice on this one, I created remedy codes that would have the established E&M codes. I could highlight this rule and click remedy codes and then click on their E&M code. Just to remind you, if you've used specialty, you know where this is. If not, in your provider table in ePass support maintenance, you'll see the icon, the caduceus right there for providers, and you'll have your provider list. You'll know at a glance if you have any specialties set up because there's a column for that. And you can see those. A doctor can only be linked to a single specialty, or rather an entry can only be. You might have Rachel Chin set up with multiple entries if you chose to do it that way. But each entry can have only one specialty. And that's what the pop-up looks like here. There's their name, and here they've got Dr. Chin with 2 codes, but it's under 1 entry, right? So it's not 2 rows. She's an ophthalmologist. So that's a free text field, but once you've saved that, anything you've already entered would be in the drop-down. So instead of having it ortho one time and ortho P one time and orthopedic one time, and you'll be able to drop down and see if that specialty has already been entered and select it so that you have some commonality. Those of you that have turned on specialty for historical diagnosis know that if you move to specialty when you didn't have it from the beginning, you start collecting data with specialty at that point going forward. So if your providers were used to looking at this data across the entire practice, and now they've been added to a specialty, well, we are now only just from this point collecting specialty with those dates. So you have to consider that. It is a form design choice of whether you display specialty on your Excel capture form. So you'll work with your form design person to set that up. Now, how does the data get there? I want to be clear because you might make assumptions if you use other features of ours. If you use an API interface so that your Excel capture diagnosis goes immediately into your EHR's historical diagnosis list, well, that happens the moment you save it in Excel capture. That's not this, okay? If you use our archive feature so that when you complete encounters in Excel Smart and send them to practice management, it creates a PDF file, and that can be swept into your archive, either linked to your EHR on a network where you look at past tickets from Excel capture. That happens when you complete in Excel Smart. Let me say that again. Archive of the tickets happens when you complete in Excel Smart. That's not this either. For this new feature for global period and date last seen, when the encounter is completed from Excel Smart, the dates are updated in the database nightly via that background SQL process. So it won't happen the moment you complete. It happens that night and would be available to view the next day. Some of you are going to be content, like for global period, we've pre-built all these procedure codes, hundreds of them that have either the 10-day or 90-day global period. And so you enter those charges, and very quickly your providers will be seeing that historical period, and you'll go, that's within 3 months, we'll have everything. So I'm not going to go to the trouble to import surgery or procedure stuff when it's going to be there so quickly. Others of you may have before now not entered surgery charges in Excel capture. And so therefore you're thinking, I'm really thinking that'll be advantageous so that we code correctly on our post-operative periods. You can drill into your PM system and collect data. We've got a utility where you can take a comma delimited file in Excel. We'll give you the format, columns, and everything, how they have to be set up. And in ePass support maintenance, you can import the global procedures and their dates and the patient and encounter. You can import the date last seen. So work with us in support if you want to import that data from history so that you have it going forward, because otherwise it's just going to start with what you complete out of each Excel Smart batch, and update overnight that data. I've got a little bonus to talk about. Also with version 5.1.12, we added hard stops with critical edits. So if you look down here in the bottom left, you know that you've been able to assign an attribute or a severity of critical, warning, or informational to your edits. And for many of you, that just meant it had either a red circle, a yellow circle, or a blue circle, or yellow triangle, blue circle. You might have learned that they sorted in order from red above the yellow, above the blue, and you knew that you could filter to either display or hide these different categories. Well, with version 5.1.12, you can turn on a feature that we have hard stop attached to the critical. And then if they get an edit, like this one, it says, we've given this new, you're billing a new patient E&M. You shouldn't, because we've seen them in the last 3 years. They can go fix that and put it into an existing patient E&M code and revalidate. They wouldn't get the edit anymore. But if they try to complete the batch and they haven't corrected this, they'll get this message: please fix the critical edit before completing the batch. To view only your critical edits, use the filter buttons in the validation results. So that would mean you would click the warning and information to hide those, and you could just move through your critical edits and correct those. But if for some reason between you and if you're the manager or you and the employee, you decide, well, we did set this up so I can't complete the batch without this, but maybe this is an exception, or we're going to move it over into the practice management system and research this or hold it there or something special. A regular user will not be able to override this. They click override critical, and the manager who has permission can put in their user ID and password and either grant full permission until the next time they exit and log into ExcelisSmart, they'll be able to override all the critical edits this user wants to, or just within this batch validation, they can override all the critical edits they find, or just for this single encounter's validation. When you click OK, you're also asked to type in a reason you're overriding, which is stored in history. And now if you're the user that has this override permission as a manager, you'd still have to type the reason. You might not have the requirement to say all the time just for the batch or just for the ticket, but you'd still have to type the reason. So that's exciting for some of our clients, that they're thinking about how to use that new feature along with global periods or date last seen. So I hope you remembered that you could type any questions into Shelley in the questions panel. And if she didn't answer the question then, we'll have those recorded by the way you logged in, and can reach out to you either from your client account executive or from support. I want to thank you for your time. I hope it was valuable. We didn't want to belabor it, but make it a quick and interesting and informative introduction to two features that we know clients have been anxious for us to deliver, and we're proud to finally give them to you. Hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone.